Welcome back to the Silent Mother podcast. I'm your host, Sam Richardson. Today's episode is one of resilience, transformation, and the deep love that never fades after loss. I'm honored to be joined by Melinda, a mother who knows the profound grief of losing a child. 10 years ago, her daughter Victoria passed away at just 23 days old due to complications from hypoplastic left heart syndrome. Losing Victoria changed everything, not just in the depths of grief, but in the way Melinda chose to live moving forward. She'll take us through her journey of navigating loss, how her grief became a turning point in her life, and the ways it shaped her as a mother to her 3 living daughters. We'll also talk about addiction, healing, and how her perspective on mortality and motherhood has evolved over the past decade. This conversation is raw, honest, and deeply meaningful, and I hope it reminds anyone listening that they are not alone in their grief. All right, I have Melinda joining me today. I am so excited because you are actually the first person that is doing this for me that I have met for the first time right now on screen, on camera. I knew Tiffany for a couple years and stuff, so this is exciting to actually finally reaching out and connecting, not meeting before. But I will let you get into your story. Again, I want to thank you for today is the 10-year anniversary of your daughter's passing, whose story you're going to share with us. And I just want to thank you. That is very, very special to me. It means a lot that you're here sharing that with us today.
Yeah, so, that's why when you were talking about weekends, I was like, this is the weekend.
Yep.
This is the weekend.
This is the time to do it. And we're going to get her story out there. So I will let you take it away.
Well, I found out I was pregnant in May of 2015. Her dad is not the same dad as my older 3 girls.
Okay.
And so I had just been sick before I got pregnant. I had been very sick. I had a complete bowel blockage. So I had surgery, I had staples and all kinds of stuff. So I was still on some medication from recovering and all that kinds of stuff. So I kind of fast forward, I find out I'm pregnant. I go on with the pregnancy at 14 weeks. And the doctor kind of recognized something wasn't quite right within the heart area of her. I had no history of heart issues in my family. Pretty sure her biological father did not either, as far as I knew from our past relationship.
Prior 3 pregnancies, you had no complications either.
None.
So this was all completely new.
Yeah. And so I just, and for me personally, I knew no matter what, whether she ultimately passed in utero or I got her for 5 years, I knew I needed to give her a chance of life either way, no matter how long I was given the gift of having her. And because we found out at my 20-week ultrasound and was given the confirmed diagnosis of HLHS, which is hypoplastic left heart syndrome. So basically she was born with half of a heart. And she ultimately had her first open heart surgery at 4 days old. And while things were going well, it took her a little bit for them to be able to get her to tolerate being sewn back up. And then that happened. And then unfortunately, she developed a little bit of an infection. On the morning of February 10th, I got the call, you need to get here. And I did. Unfortunately, she'd already passed by the time I got there. What ultimately had happened was her upper left part of her lung had collapsed. And when they went in to fix that, a big chunk of mucus broke off and they were not able to get in there. So though she had her heart issue, that's not ultimately what she passed from. She passed from complications with the recovery from her first open heart surgery.
That sounds very similar. Sorry, to Cadence.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, she ultimately, so it was interesting when I started talking about a heart defect, so many people, it's more common to hear about the hydroplastic left syndrome and it was pulmonary atresia. So your daughter, her whole half of her heart did not form, correct?
Exactly.
For Cadence, it was a pulmonary valve. So the valve that takes the blood flow, that wasn't formed. So that was the difference there. But ultimately, even after her heart surgery at 3 days old, she contracted sepsis, which is the blood disease infection. And that's actually what killed her.
It's not their heart. No, that's not what killed him. And that's
No,
why I
and
always say, I've gotten the question, well, do you regret your choice? No, to this day, I do not regret that. And they knew my wishes. She technically could still be here with us. They could have fought. They could have kept
mhm,
her alive for me. But then what kind of life am I giving her by having a shell of her here for my
yeah.
sake?
Yeah.
So I knew and had shared with her team, if you have to fight for her for too long past a certain point, and you know she is not going to have a quality of life, you have my permission to stop. And that's ultimately what the decision that they had to make. So,
I cannot imagine having to make that. I mean, I was anytime I was given the decision to stop, I told them to keep going. More like when they wanted to see if she wanted to be on the heart transplant list. I was given the option to like, well, should we just go for it or just not, like that ultimate type thing. I was like, no, we have to do everything we possibly can. But yeah, when they get to that point, because Cadence did suffer a stroke being transported from Akron to Cleveland.
mhm,
So even if she wouldn't have gotten sick and died from sepsis, there was that whole thing too. We have no clue how that would have affected her.
exactly.
Like you said, the ultimate outcome of what kind of life we would have been giving them had they kept living.
Right.
With you having older children, like
Yes.
how would that affect you or
I, at the time, was still living with my parents and still a single mom.
oh
Like,
my goodness.
I was prepared, if we were healthy and we still, we came home and we were okay. We had the first sew up and we were doing great. I was prepared for that. But I wasn't prepared for a child that potentially could be brain dead. There's no way. I
Right.
don't know how my how my kids would have other kids would have handled that. That's a lot for them.
Yeah, how did they handle everything that did happen?
My middle daughter was still living with her father at that time, so she was a little more distance from it, and being that she wasn't right there. My oldest daughter and my youngest daughter, though, were right there with me. In fact, my oldest daughter was in the delivery room with me and everything when she was born. So they had pictures of being in the NICU and the PICU with her and everything. So they love Victoria. Like, they talk about her all the time. So though yes, her death impacted her, I think they would have been more negatively impacted had we brought home a sicker baby than if
Right.
she hadn't been sick.
Do you think that going through that together like brought you guys closer in a way or strengthened your bond?
Yes, because it ultimately also helped brought me my sobriety.
Okay. Good for you.
So, um, being on that ball and chain of pills for too long for chronic pain, I was over it and became friendly with stuff you do,
Yeah.
actually.
Okay.
And it freed me from a ball and chain that my kids had to see me go through and do for far too long. And they was finally able to have a present mother versus a head in the clouds mother. I'll just put it that way.
Wow. Crazy how trauma turns you on to, alcoholism or a vice, and then how you can use another situational trauma to realize
Mm-hmm.
that you should better your life from that.
No,
Uh,
I'll say it
but
loud and proud. Marijuana saved my life.
yeah,
No joke.
girl, right there with
High
you.
five.
Yeah.
Seriously,
Yes.
it's literally saved my life because honestly, pain pills were doing nothing but actually making me sicker in the long run. To be quite honest with you,
Right.
I,
Yeah.
I I'm healthier now, 6 years sober off of that than when I was on it. And they just kept giving it to you, the doctors. And it's like,
Yeah. Yeah. It I've watched a lot of the documentaries about like the drug industry and
yeah.
that's interesting too because when I had to have a DNC with a miscarriage and I
Hmm.
was like clotting and hemorrhaging coming out following it
It's the
and it
worst,
yeah
horrible thing.
I thought I was dying. Kyle thought I was dying. I was crying
Yeah.
on the toilet, went to the
You don't
hospital.
think that much blood loss is something that's normal. Like, you
Yeah.
literally, it looks like a massacre.
And it hurt so bad. And I was
It's
literally,
contractions. That's
yes,
why.
yeah. You're basically going into labor to get rid of
Hmm.
everything in there. You're shedding your lining.
Yep.
I was in
Yep.
the ER just like literally bleeding out on the table. And like, they're like, you're fine. I was like, can I at least have something for the pain? Just like an Oxycontin or something. And they refused to give me anything stronger than Tylenol because
A
of
lot
like
of the
how, yeah.
ERs, a lot of the ERs are, I mean, you literally, thankfully, as sad as it is, with my record, my hospital will give me stuff because it's within my record. I've got chronic pain. I've got these issues. I've got
Oh,
Crohn's disease. I've
nice.
got
Okay.
degenerative this, but they give it to me too easily. I don't necessarily always need pain medication. Okay.
Right.
So let's fix a problem before you just offer that,
100% agree
you
with that. Yeah.
So, but that all, because I was definitely, still dealing with the chronic pain when I had and then delivered her, but her birth and death ultimately kind of shook me to my core in the best way possible because it made me want to live that much better and present for my living children. And because I now have a job, which is to tell Victoria's story because she did not die in vain. There is education to be had, people to be learn about her heart condition, um, all the things that science is doing to help improve those heart surgeries when those babies that have HLA-HS or
Mm-hmm.
your little one had, that they can make them. In fact, you know what's crazy? Her intensivist that morning said what happened with her lung and the mucus thing. They actually have a thing for adults, already patents that they use in the hospitals for that exact thing. He had literally been in a meeting that morning before she went into her event for the pediatric one to hopefully be patented. He said if he had
Oh
had
my
that, had it
gosh.
already been patented, she'd still be here. So he had it was a really
Wait.
hard pill for him to swallow when he lost her.
Yeah.
It was comforting him because he's like, it shouldn't have been her. She should still be here.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
that was a very hard pill for him to swallow. He's like, I would just held that tool in my hand. And because it's not patent, I can't go get it and use it
That
because it's a liability.
that has to be absolutely
Right?
heartbreaking. And
Right?
it and talking about how far they've come. So you were able to find out while you were pregnant that she was sick. I remember
14
that.
weeks, they knew something was wrong in the twin. And then 6 weeks later, when she got a little bit bigger, I got the confirmation through the pediatric cardiologist.
So your regular OB found out during your normal screen and it's like, hey, something's wrong. I'm going to send you on. Okay, see, that's exactly what happened with me too.
High risk, anyways, because of my age at the time. I was 38. So, I was
Okay.
older. So,
Geriatric pregnancy, mature
exactly. And that's
pregnancy.
exactly what they call them. Like, geriatric is the 80s, okay?
Yeah.
So I was high risk. So I was already seeing an MFM as it was. And so I was
Okay.
really highly followed. And she came out perfect. Like, she came out wanting to nurse, breathing on her own. But of course, not knowing how long that would last, they, of course, wanted to take her right away. So I got to hold my daughter the day she was born and the day she died. And as morbid as it may seem to many, I held two viewings of her and I picked her up and I held her at every single one of them.
That is not morbid to me. I mean, as someone who understands, I'm so glad to hear that you got to have that moment with her. When I had Cadence, they had already known that she was going to be sick, and the PDA, that the valve that they have that stays open while they're in utero and that shuts
Mm-hmm.
off in a few days, that is the valve that she was missing. So she would have died without surgery if by 3 days
Right.
old. So they immediately took her. They had a C-section. I didn't get to hold her or anything. Go to the
Thankfully,
hospital.
they let me labor. I got to
Oh,
pull her out just
good.
like I did all of my other kids. They let me hold her for as long as, I think I got her for about 10-15 minutes and then they whisked
Okay.
her away.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was still right after birth, pretty much, though.
Yeah, and I have some
Okay.
of the most beautiful pictures of her being me lifting her up and then having her on my chest, having her nursing. So my best friend who happened to be there had made a beautiful book. So I have all of that.
Oh, that is so wonderful.
Yeah. So
Um, that is really wonderful. When Cadence passed away, because as soon as she was born, they put a feeding tube and breathing tube, like they put
hmm
all the tubes in, and I never actually got to see her without the tubes until after she was passed.
Oh. You know what? They were amazing. And actually, they had dressed her and put a bow on her because that was my thing. And had her wrapped in a beautiful non-hospital blanket for me when I got to the hospital to hold her. There's these people, they come around and like they give the beads to the kids and when they are in PICU and stuff like anyways, they made sure we got imprints of her hands. We got
Hmm.
painting, like the images of her hands and her feet. So they were amazing, and I have so many keepsakes of her that I
I don't know if I asked you what state was this all in?
California,
So this is
California,
California. Okay.
yeah,
Same thing here in Ohio. They when she was in the children's hospital
child life
NICU.
specialists. That's
There
who
we
it
go.
is, the
Yeah,
child life
child life
specialist.
specialist. Yeah, they came in, did the same thing.
They
So I
treated
still
my older girls so well. They involved them at
good.
every opportunity. So,
Good. I don't think you're morbid at all for holding her after the fact. Like I said, I never saw Cadence without any tubes, and let alone get to hold her without that. So, and I never got to dress her because her whole time in the hospital, she was just in a diaper.
right.
Um, so I asked the funeral home before her viewing if I could bring the clothes and actually dress her body. And my mom and grandma went with me, and like I got to put her little tights on and her dress and I put her bow. And I know a lot of people might be like, "Oh my God, that's crazy." Like you saying this might be morbid, but no, that was absolutely everything to me to say I at least got to dress her one time.
Even though you know they're physically not there, there's just something about holding your baby one last time in your arms, and nothing can take that away.
No, and you stay here 10 years later, and it seems like you could feel it just as it was fresh that day.
Because my love for her will always continue to grow no matter how long she's gone. My tears are only the example of how much my depth of love for her is, and it knows no bounds. There is no limit for my love for her.
And even to say, a lot of people they don't know what to say, so they say the wrong thing. You
It's an
were up.
awkward and icky situation. Most people don't know how. Um, it, it, it's not, and unfortunately, society has made infant death or miscarriage so taboo that no, people don't know how to respond to things like that at all because nobody wants to talk about it because it doesn't feel good. Well,
No.
unfortunately, there are things in life that don't feel good and they need to be talked about.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say. With your three daughters, like you already had three kids,
Hmm.
and then you have the fourth one. I could imagine, I know with me, it was, oh, well, you're so young, you can have more. I can imagine the opposite, with how did that feel with, oh, well, you already have your three older girls, so
And
really,
let me tell you, my now husband has no children. And we tried, and we had 9 miscarriages in 5 years. So
oh my
no, I
gosh.
couldn't still have babies.
And this was
It was
all after
done.
Victoria?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So sorry.
Yep. So no, yes. The thing is it's not any child subsequently that I would have had isn't a replacement for Victoria. Victoria will always maintain being my fourth child. Any
Hmm.
subsequent child will be my fifth, sixth, whatever. There's nothing that will ever replace her place in my life, ever.
No, and it shouldn't. There's the thing with our kids saying, "Mom, who's your favorite?" My kids ask me that all the time. All of you are my favorite. I know that sounds so corny and like a
We
cop
love
out, but
them
like
each for
you
their
are,
own
they
individualness.
are. And they all teach us something. They
They
all
do.
they all make us a better person or show us something of who we're supposed to be. And I truly believe the experiences that we've had with losing our daughters, it was meant to be to show us like there was definitely something. Well, there's something to come from them.
Let me tell you, I am a preschool teacher. I teach the 2.5 to 3.5 age group. It's my bridging group to preschool. Um, and I had a little girl that I had had for almost 8 months. And when she had come back from spring or Christmas break, there was just something very, very, very different. And I knew it was a mama gut instinct. Her little tummy was fully distended, super pale, swollen cheeks, not chubby cheeks. It was swollen. I looked at her picture from summertime to now. Sure enough, the 2 weeks ago on Friday, she started throwing up and it was just bile and liquid. That little girl had celiac disease. And do you know that her pediatrician had been telling her parents that she was just fine? And when she was complaining about her legs hurting because her joints were hurting because she was swelling up, oh, it's just growing pains. Do you know
Oh
that
my
little girl had
God.
not gained a pound since her 2-year checkup?
Oh my
But pediatrician
gosh.
kept telling them, oh, she's fine. And that mom listened to my gut instinct. I know. I have been in the medical world so much and so in-depthly. I know when a little baby has something wrong. And I knew
Mm-hmm.
it. And they I was right. I was
Yeah.
right. No, I will never forego or ignore that gut instinct. You know. It
Yeah,
it
and thank you for
it
speaking up.
Yes, and her mom said the same thing because she's now home. She's back to her old sweet loosey goosey self. Like she would literally come into class, sit at the table and just kind of sit there, then go to circle time and just sit there crisscross applesauce.
Mm.
Anytime somebody would barely touch her, she would just start crying. Her body hurt her. Her body was inflamed and nobody was listening. Nobody was taking them seriously. So, no, I will
Ugh.
always speak up for medical things like that because it can
No,
save
I
a
feel that.
life.
Yeah, I mean, I've had stomach issues my whole life, but
I have
it's not.
Crohn's disease, so
Yeah, I have I have, it's not celiac. I have ulcerative colitis,
yes,
and
see, you know,
there
IBD
was
is no
stuff.
joke.
Yeah, and a lot of the times it was pushed off as anxiety too as I was a kid. And it's like, well, yes, I do have anxiety, but I also have stomach issues.
It
I've
took
got
them
it
a year to
all.
diagnose me at 22.
Mm,
They kept, oh, it's this. Then I tested positive for H. pylori. Oh, it's that. Oh, no, you have ulcers. Oh, no. My mom took me to the hospital one night in November of 898. I was 87 pounds, Sam, at 22 years old.
oh my
I am five
gosh.
five, and I should not be 87 pounds. My
No.
mom's like, you're anorexic. I'm like, I'm not, I swear.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, no, I don't take things when I start noticing such obvious body changes. I don't
Yeah,
play
you
with that.
recognize the patterns.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. I think people with
So,
chronological illnesses, it's just something like, hey, I know there's something that's not right.
you just know it's that intuitive spirit within us. And you're just like, I'm also an empath, so I feel people instinctively as well. So, I don't know. I just knew. And her mama reached out yesterday and thanked me again because she's like, I got my girl back. I got my girl back. And I'm like, thank God.
Yeah. I think like it's good to point out the stomach and the gut issues because the gluten thing with celiacs, so many people now are like, oh my gosh, a gluten allergy, and they roll their eyes because things in like autism, ADHD, everyone's trying to raise awareness for stuff that now, oh, everybody has it, so no, you don't.
People in other countries have that stuff, celiac disease, nowhere near high percentages we do here in America. It's
Right.
crazy.
Right. I mean, yeah, the obesity factor alone between America and every other country.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
they even compare like the Fanta drinks versus like the orange juice compared to our orange juice. And it's like insane the significantly different color.
We've written 15 chickens come March. So I'm going more to Homestead.
Go eggs.
Yes.
Back to Miss Victoria. Yeah, I definitely feel that my emotions will always be raw where she's concerned because she's always going to be at the top of my heart and right there on the surface. She's going to always be there. And it's my job to tell her story and help bring awareness to, I mean, it's been congenital heart defect week all week long. I wore
Mm-hmm.
red every single day um, in her honor to support that. So I try my best to speak her name and bring awareness when I can.
Good. I'm glad for you, and I'm glad that you're able to do that. Not everyone that has gone through something like that is able.
I
And
don't
that's
think we
why.
offer enough coping and helping skills for people after this happens.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I remember the little folder I was given after she left and it was time for them to take her body and I had to say goodbye and I just get this envelope. Granted, I got a few $100s to help me get started towards like a funeral arrangements and all that kind of stuff. But nobody tells you how to grieve losing a child. There's no book.
No.
And I don't think there's enough support out there. I don't think, which is why I have so much thankful and gratefulness to you for bringing awareness to things like this for us moms, because not enough people bring it out. Not enough people talk about it.
You know,
Death is normal, and sometimes it happens to children.
yeah. And especially like when you're shaken to your core. I was 19 when I lost her, and I wasn't even, I was still a baby myself, and
Exactly.
my own mom didn't know how to cope, so now I've just kind of, I almost feel like I've just, I've been through so much crazy trauma in my life that that's just part of my story now. And I've always been a talker. I've always been someone that could, I try to relate to people by trauma. Like I try to just be like, what, you don't have to be so serious around me. Like, oh yeah, I know what it's
Right.
like to be like that. And then just, okay, people can breathe. When I lost her, yeah, I talk about it. Do you, um, you're comfortable speaking about it, obviously. Do you, when you happen to just like meet someone new for the first time and it kind of just like comes about that you lost
Hmm.
Victoria, do you like see that immediate, their reaction in their face, like it just, they sink, and it's almost like, no, I'm not like trying to tell you this out of pity, like please, it's okay, like they almost go,
Well,
they start going,
that
I'm so
and
sorry.
a lot of times they don't understand how I can still be positive and find joy in my grief. That's
Yes.
probably their biggest thing that I've had over time is like, or why I'm not, I'm personally, I'm a believer in Christian, so, or why I'm not angry at God.
Hmm.
And for me personally, I know where I believe my daughter is, and I know I'm going to be there one day with her. And guess what? She has a whole heart. That's better than I could ever ask for her to have right now. So no, I'm not angry at all. I know where she is, and she's in a much better place than this world is right now.
That is something that I've gotten to, and for me it's just like when everyone's like, you're so strong, I'm like, I don't feel
I'm
like I
not strong.
am. I just, this is my life, this is what it
It's
is.
not a matter of strength, it's a matter of choosing to live within my circumstances
Mm.
or drown in my circumstances. What am I going to do? I have three older children. Do I want them to see me flounder and just die into my bed because my baby died? That's not fair to them at all. And I don't have just myself to think about. So no, I'm not strong. I'm choosing to live for my children. That's just a fact of life. It's not a matter of being strong in my for me personally.
No, I
Um,
completely, I feel that, and that was the best way to put it into terms.
I just feel like, yes, my faith has a lot to do with how I'm able to turn my grief into joy, but I not everybody's a believer, so I don't try to shove that down people's throat. So if people ask, I'll just politely say my faith has helped me a lot and just leave
Hmm.
it at that. If they don't go on, they ask more, I answer more, but that's just a big part of how and I've been able to truly live and thrive through my grief because I thrived through losing her.
And I think having faith is the right answer. Religious aside, I was born Catholic. I wanted to be a nun, and a lot of, obviously I went through very angry stages when I lost her, and I was like, what the heck, God? I worshiped you. I wanted to be a nun for you, and now like you took my baby of all people, and my family still thinks, oh, you don't like God now, and it's not that. That just made me really figure out what type of relationship I wanted. Not that I don't necessarily believe in God, but I do believe in a higher power. I have faith.
Right.
I believe in, so I think no
And that's a
matter,
very personal thing for each person.
it is. And I think
And
faith,
you don't have to bring a denomination into your faith. Your faith is what you and God have going on.
yeah,
End of story.
your faith is just, you know what? This is what I know. I have faith in a better outcome for my life. I have faith in a better, this is what it's going to be. And if you just have faith in a positive outcome, regardless of your religion,
Right.
that I feel like that's really is the answer, is how to
Yes.
stay positive.
A lot of people, because being that I was trying for a baby after when I got remarried to my now husband, I became very into like the IVF community and secondary infertility and community on Instagram and stuff. And I will say, I don't try to be pretend that every single day I'm all smiles and giggles because guess what? Toxic positivity is also a real thing.
Exactly.
Yes, my child died, and you know what? There are days I want to go like this to everybody, and sometimes even God, because I just want to hold my baby, and that's my reality. But there are most of the days that I don't. I'm okay, and I know she's in a better place. But the reality of it is, yes, there are bad days too. So I don't
Yeah.
want to pretend like I'm always happy and I always have that joy. My joy for her within my grief will always be within me, but sometimes the depths of my grief need to come out, and that's okay too.
And I think grief, it's important to know that like healing, grief is a process. It's
And it's
some days it's going
never
to be
ending
harder.
journey. It
No.
doesn't stop. Your grief journey stops when you die.
Mm-hmm.
When
And
you're dead,
you can be
that's it.
perfectly fine and then you smell something that reminded you of the hospital or
Exactly.
and you are right back there.
We're cleaning out our storage unit. I found her pillows with the little gel packs in it for underneath her head. You know what I'm doing with those? Those are going to be turned into a blanket, okay? So, yes, but I didn't stop and just immediately start sobbing. I looked at that and thought, it's today, I know. She gave me a God wink. She knew what today was. And she knew I was going to be talking about her. And so I have my hope and my joy. Those are my glimmers of joy that I take so deeply into my heart because grief doesn't always have to be negative, even though there are bad days where grief is concerned. I think too many people equate grief and death with negativity and a
Mm-hmm.
bad thing, and it doesn't have to equate that.
I completely agree with that. Like with my kids, obviously they know that Cadence passed away and they ask the questions, but why do I have to die? Or I'm scared to die. And the older I get and going through the grief like that, it's just, it is what it is. At any moment, anybody could lose anyone.
Exactly. And that's, you have to have, I come to a place in my life where I've faced death so many times. I know obviously he's not done with me yet, but I'm ready when he is. I'm not afraid to die at all. I'm completely at peace for when it's my time. I hope it's not some horrific, crazy, god awful way, of
Right.
course.
Same.
but, but I'm not afraid of that at all. I'm not afraid of mortality. I'm not afraid of finality.
I used to be, but not anymore.
Everybody goes through that fear at some point.
Like I'm at the point where I'm mostly afraid to die right now to leave my kids without
Yeah.
me. It's more for them. Again, like you
Yeah.
said, when you become a mom, you don't live for yourself
You're in the
anymore.
back burner. You're the back burner. They're not you're not your priority. They are your priority.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that your older girls got the sober mom
Yeah.
that
Well,
they
and I
deserve
was
and
able to be at my oldest daughter's wedding this past June and completely sober and watch her walk down the aisle to her forever man. And her dad was there and he was able to walk her down the aisle. So, yeah, it's been real good past 6 years.
good.
Definitely.
That is the most amazing story to be able to take that and turn it into something like this and that you keep sharing her story.
And I will till I die. Her story doesn't just impact her heart condition, her story, her birth, her death, all of it has impacted everybody directly involved with her in some way, shape, or form. And that is something that I find very comforting and special because people aren't afraid to say her name. In fact, people send me pictures all the time of them wearing lavender and I saw a butterfly today and I really think it was Tori saying hi. And hey, I wore my purple shirt or my earrings and I was thinking about Tori today. So she's always here. I'm okay being here without her physical body.
And one day you will hold her again.
And I can't wait. And it will be one of the most glorious days ever.
So your now husband was not
Yes.
Victoria's father.
No.
That's obviously the same with Kyle and I. So he was not with you through her journey.
No.
I know, like, after I lost her, I was scared. How could I find somebody that would remember her with me or like understand my grief? But he does.
I didn't even have to think about it. He ensures that I know he remembers her by putting things on her grave if he happens to drive by the cemetery and taking a picture and saying, "Hey, I just stopped by and said hello," and bringing home things that are lavender or butterfly themed, knowing I always think of her because we never called her our angel in heaven. She was always our butterfly in heaven. I didn't even have to ask. He knew about her. I talked about her, and it was just like Victoria's a
She's
part of
part of
him
you.
too.
Mhm.
Hmm.
That is beautiful. There are good men out there still that
Brian is an
understand.
amazing man. It's funny though, because you know what's funny? When they say you marry your father, I married my father.
Well, I I almost married my father, but luckily I got away from him and married my grandfather.
Ah,
That's and
see?
my grandfather's more like my dad, like who should have been my dad. My dad was
Yeah.
absentee.
But I love my dad, don't get me wrong, but I
Yeah.
definitely married. The similarities are hysterical. I'm like, I didn't even realize I was doing this and I did it. What the heck? He treats me how my daddy treated me because he's not my real dad. He adopted me when I was 16 because him and my mom, we were a combined family. So he had three, she had three. They got married and a year later had my baby sister. So there's seven of us. He took Victoria's death very hard. He was very in love with that little girl. In fact, her middle name, Catherine, is after two people. His baby sister, whom passed away unfortunately back in the 40s from SIDS
Oh my
at nine
gosh.
months old. And her name was Catherine. And then my best friend since birth is also Catherine. So that's what her middle name is after. So my dad loved that little girl more than I could have ever even thought. I was so afraid to tell him when I found out I was pregnant because I'm living at home with them. Okay, mind you, with
Mm-hmm.
three other
Mm-hmm.
kids as it is. And then here I come telling him, not with the dude anymore. By the way, I'm pregnant. He was the least reactive. My mom was more reactive than he was.
Kind of interesting too, for both Victoria and Cadence, they were unplanned and not the greatest situation. Not an 18-year-old shouldn't be getting pregnant. She's supposed to be going off to New York City and living with her
Right?
mom. So these unplanned, unexpected twists in our story that we started planning for. Okay, we're gonna have a new baby and this is where we go. And then another wrench gets thrown in, and this unexpected pregnancy that we had to wrap our head around. Now we don't have to do it. Like it's like
It's such a mind fuck.
it
Pardon
is.
the language, but it's
No.
literally such a mind fuck because you're just like, oh, and I couldn't let go of her. I couldn't let go of her. So I actually pumped for 3 months after she passed, and I ended up donating 2,000 ounces of milk in her name. So it was all I had left physically of her. So I did it for as long as I could tolerate it.
But
But
look what you're doing for other babies.
yeah, and they were very thankful. And the cool thing was the Mother's Milk Bank in San Jose, they send you the cooler.
Mm.
They make everything easy for you. So my mom finally got her freezer back too, so she was pretty happy with that when it happened.
That was nice. We donated mine too. I had a lot of at the hospital they were storing all my milk for her because they were feeding her through a feeding tube.
She
And
didn't even get a chance to have any. She
no, I
didn't get
had
that chance.
nothing. She immediately because when she was first born, the nurses did take a picture of her for me, but she already had her feeding tube in her nose. So I
Yeah.
do have one of her without her vent.
Then yeah, the vent.
Yeah, but she just has her little breathing. But then she was so sick most of her life, she never even got my milk. She just had to get all the nutrients.
That
And
was the same with Victoria. Did Cadence end up on ECMO as well?
I think so. She was on
It's
so
where
many
they
different
have the
things.
machine running the blood correctly from the lungs to the heart. doing it
No,
for her? Okay.
no, she never did that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they had her on right after, well, during the surgery, they're automatically put on it.
Yeah.
And then afterwards as well, she was on it for a little while. So
Okay. Yeah, I don't think. No, I don't
you would have
remember that.
known because
Yeah,
they would have
yeah.
had like tubes coming from like right up here out of
Okay,
her,
yeah.
where her
No.
surgery site was.
No, the only thing she ever had like coming out was just a drain tube, like a
Yeah.
chest drain tube.
Yeah.
Never imagined we would see a baby like that up close and personal, but your own baby. Like now that I'm talking about that, I'm like, oh my,
Well, I think about it too, and I look back and I'm like, my days were filled with let's go pee, let's get some more pee in the bag, let's make sure we have
Yep.
some output.
Yep, I remember that.
Because my mom kept our prayer chain up, so every day it was like, okay, what's the new thing? What does she need to do today? So, and I have a page for her. If you ever want to look it up on Facebook, it's called Victoria's Journey, and it has her entire history from right before I delivered until she passed. And
I looked at it.
did you? Okay, I
Yes,
wasn't
but yeah,
sure.
share that with her. It's on Facebook if anybody else wants to go check it out more
Yes,
and see
yes.
pictures. And
Just look
I
up
will,
Victoria's Journey.
and I will also, if you want to send me some of your favorite pictures of her, and I will make
I
sure those
will.
get posted with this too.
Yes.
Is there anything else you wanted to say about her?
I'm
You said
just
a lot.
glad that you had me on your podcast and allowed me to share her story and say her name. And
I really can't
um,
thank you enough for doing that.
yeah, well, I appreciate your heart and your idea for this particular podcast because, as we said earlier, unfortunately, any lost mama will tell you it's a sucky club that nobody wants to be in, and people don't teach you how to deal
There's a
with
lot
that.
of us though.
There
Like the
really is.
more and more I meet people, there's a lot of us that know some kind of grief like this.
Unfortunately, before my mom had me, she had my baby sister at 6 months gestation, my baby sister Lynette. So, yeah, my mama knew that heartache too, unfortunately.
When you think about getting pregnant, you think it's going to be all
Easy
rainbows and
peasy lemon
sunshine,
squeezy.
and yeah, and then we need to talk about it, because then if people, after you have a traumatic pregnancy, you want to have another one, and you're capable, you can have more kids after going through something traumatic like that.
You can. You
You
really
can
can. And you can recover and have a positive experience
you
because you
can.
have to train your brain. This is a different pregnancy. This will be a different outcome.
Mm-hmm.
I learned really hard to work on my self affirmations and changing my way of thinking. Not toxically, like positive thinking really does work. I
Mm-hmm.
choose joy and a positive attitude when I wake up in the morning. I can wake up cranky. Does that mean I have to be that way? No, it's
Right.
a choice I make. That's just how I see it.
Right. But I think that is a great way to view everything.
Well, thank you for giving us a voice, Sam. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for sharing yours.
Thank you.
As we close today's episode, I want to thank Melinda for sharing her heart, her story, and her wisdom with us. A decade after Victoria's passing, her love for her daughter is still so present, not just in memory, but in the way she continues to live and grow. Melinda's story serves as a reminder that grief doesn't mean letting go. It means carrying love forward in new ways. It's okay to change, to heal, to find joy again. And most of all, it's okay to keep saying their name. Melinda, thank you for your vulnerability and for showing us that even in the hardest moments, there is light to be found. And to everyone listening, I hope you offer yourself grace in your own journey. If today's conversation resonated with you and you want to connect, you can find the Silent Mother Project on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And if you have a story you'd like to share, you can submit it by emailing me at livingrichardsson@gmail.com. Thank you for being here.